Most players think attacks fail because of execution, but that's not the real reason. Attacks fail before they even start. They fail in the planning, because if your plan is wrong, your execution doesn't matter. You can play it perfectly and still fail. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to think before a CWL attack, not the strategy, but the decisions that make the strategy work. This is a very standard TH-18 base with a rage tower in the core, 2 sweepers pointing down, and an invisibility spell tower close to the town hall. That already makes it harder for me to go straight into it. For this base, I'm going to use a Dragon Rider attack for 2 reasons. First, I am very good with Dragon Riders. Second, for CWL attacks, Dragon Riders are harder to be baited because strategies like throwers can be punished by spring traps. So I don't like to use those in CWL. I prefer to go with Dragon Riders. This is my standard Dragon Rider setup. I use the Dragon Duke with Angry Jelly, and I also use the Prince and the Queen. So the first question you need to ask is, where is the best position for the Duke? Because the Duke creates the funnel for the Dragon Riders, and he is the most important piece in this composition. As you can see, the sweepers are pointing downward, which creates some possible positions for the Duke. Using the Duke at the top is very difficult because of the invisibility spell tower. It protects that entire section. And on top of that, there are a lot of heroes there, including the King. The King has a lot of HP, so if the Duke focuses on him, it becomes very hard to clear that area. So I prefer to use the Duke on one of the sides, either left or right. On the left side, there are 2 ricochet cannons, which makes it easier for the Duke to clean. On the right side, there is the Giga Bomb, which the Duke might be able to tank. So it depends on how I want to use the Dragon Riders later. Let's imagine I use the Dragon Duke on the right side and clean that section. Now I need to decide where I enter with the Dragon Riders and where I use the Queen. There are basically 2 options. If I go with Dragon Riders from the top, I need to use the Queen on the side to funnel. And this is where synchronization becomes very important. By the time the Dragon Riders reach that area, the funnel must already be completed because the core is separated. When the core is separated, you need a bigger funnel, and you need to complete it early. Otherwise, the Dragon Riders will go around the base instead of entering the core. I could use an overgrowth spell in the core, but if I do that, the Dragon Riders will follow the same path as the Queen. So both will clean the same side, and that is not ideal. Because if the Queen is already there generating value, and the Dragon Riders follow her, they remove that value. I prefer each troop to clean a different section. So maybe I could use the Queen on the left first, with Siege Barracks to help funnel. After that, I could send the Dragon Riders from the top, since the funnel would already be done. But I cannot delay too much, because if I delay too much, the Queen will start taking damage from defenses that the Dragon Riders are supposed to handle. So there is a timing balance here. You use the Queen slightly earlier, but not too early. However, there is a big problem with entering from the top, and that is the heroes. This composition uses Dragon Riders for defenses and Inferno Dragons for heroes. Dragon Riders don't focus and take out heroes, so Inferno Dragons need to support them. Since these are 2 different troops, they must stay synchronized. Dragon Riders cannot go too far ahead of the Inferno Dragons. They need to move together. But in this base, there are a lot of heroes around the town hall, and very few defenses to keep the Dragon Riders occupied. So what would happen is the Dragon Riders would clear the defenses too quickly, while the Inferno Dragons, together with the Minion Prince, would stay behind dealing with the heroes. And because of that, you would get poor synchronization between the 2 parts of the attack. The front side would move too fast, clearing everything, while the backside would get delayed dealing with heroes. Now, if there were fewer heroes around the town hall, or more defenses to keep the Dragon Riders occupied, then I could consider entering from the top. I could even adjust the composition, using fewer Dragon Riders and more Inferno Dragons, but I don't like that adjustment. I prefer to maintain the standard composition. So that leaves me with the second option. The Queen takes the town hall section, and the Dragon Riders come from the left side. In my opinion, this is the better approach. And the most important thing for the Queen to take is the Revenge Tower. This is something I always talk about. The Revenge Tower creates side damage when the Dragon Riders move around the core. So if I use the Queen on the Town Hall side, I must remove the Revenge Tower. Not because of its value, but because of the side damage it creates. That's why I will use the Siege Barracks with the Queen to guarantee she clears that section. So now the plan is clear. Dragon Duke on the right side to create the funnel. Queen takes the Town Hall and the Revenge Tower. I will use spells to make sure the Queen clears that area. And I know she can do it because the clan castle is at the bottom, so she won't get distracted by defensive troops. I can also use headhunters with her to deal with the heroes. Since the clan castle is far, I don't risk pulling ice golems. That's why I know the Queen can handle that section. Now let's focus on the Dragon Duke. What is the best way for him to funnel? I can go from the top going down or from the bottom going up, but going from the side is very important. If I use the Duke starting at the multi-archer tower, he will move forward and leave defenses behind, creating side damage. So it's much better to move him across a line of defenses. That way he takes less damage overall. If I go from the top, I have a problem. The long shot creates side damage from the left. So that path is not ideal. The best option is to start from the bottom and move upward. He takes controlled damage and clears the section more efficiently. There is still some side damage from the scatter shot, but that's acceptable. It's better than taking damage from the long shot. When the Duke reaches the key position, I use the ability to deal with the air defense. Now the funnel is established from bottom to top. Now let's focus on the queen. First, I need to break the wall so she can enter. I can also use the giant arrow to disable the invisibility spell tower. For the queen to go inside, I need to create a light funnel on the left side, but I cannot over funnel, because if I do, the queen might not stay in position when the invisibility activates. She needs buildings to anchor her position. She could move outside the base since the core will be invisible for a few seconds. So I will funnel just enough, not too much. I will position the queen slightly to the right, so I only need a small funnel on the left side. When the queen reaches the town hall, she starts taking side damage from nearby defenses. So I need to deal with that. I can use a dragon rider to tank or remove that side damage, because if I ignore it, the queen might fail the core. So I invest resources here to guarantee she takes the revenge tower. This is the most important part of the plan. If possible, the giant arrow can also hit the air defense at the bottom. It's not essential, but it helps the finish. After the core is controlled, I send the dragon riders from the left side. The goal is to make them move around the base and into the core, but there is a defensive ring, so I need to break it first. I will use the overgrowth spell to control that area and force the dragon riders into the core. Then I will use the eternal tome to protect them. I will also keep a poison for the clan castle and use a baby dragon to fix pathing if needed. Timing is critical here. I cannot delay too much or the queen takes too much side damage, but I also cannot go too early, so I will wait just enough. Now that the plan is ready, let's go for the attack. And everything went according to plan. The only thing I missed was the giant arrow not hitting the air defense. One important concept is using a dragon rider on the right to remove side damage. In this case, it wasn't critical, but in other situations, with Teslas, traps, or skeletons, that could kill the queen. So I wait for the core interaction, and when side damage starts to matter, I send the main army. I was a bit late with the Eternal Tome, so I took more damage than necessary. But overall, the execution was still very good. I revived the Duke when the monolith was under overgrowth, so it wouldn't focus him. That extended his value safely. So this was one of my league attacks. I got the triple. And that's why I like using Dragon Riders in CWL, because I can plan the attack and finish the base with more control. Let's attack another base with Dragon Riders. This is actually a very hard base to triple with this type of strategy, but I'll do it anyway to show you how the decision-making works for this kind of attack. First, let's analyze Duke's position, which is the most important part. We have sweepers positioned to protect the core, and the monolith is placed closer to the town hall. Also, the air defenses are centralized rather than on the edges. This is a newer base design specifically meant to counter Dragon Riders. Normally, bases already defend well against throwers because of the lava launcher, so to deal with Dragon Riders, players now centralize air defenses instead of leaving them exposed on the sides. Here, using Duke into the sweeper direction is not ideal. The monolith placement is also very strong near the town hall, and we have a revenge tower close to 2 air defenses, which creates a lot of value in that area. However, the clan castle is a key factor. As I mentioned before, the clan castle counters Duke very effectively, especially with a Furnace plus Headhunters combination. This setup is very strong, but it also has a weakness. If I use double poison, I can eliminate it very easily. This isn't common in ranked matches because most players don't have this exact composition, but in this case, I can plan around it. Even though there are 2 air defenses with the Revenge Tower, the tower won't be fully activated, so I can still take this area with Duke. His ability also helps deal with both air defenses efficiently. Now, whenever you evaluate an entry point, you need to check for side damage. Once Duke is deployed, what will actually hit him? The multi-archer tower is too far away. The ricochet cannon doesn't apply pressure since it only targets ground. There are 2 ground expos which don't affect him, so there is basically no side damage. The only damage is frontal, and even that has limited reach. So even though this area looks well protected, in practice it isn't that dangerous because there's no side damage. That means Duke can clear it reliably. I can remove the clan castle, and the remaining damage is manageable. The only thing I need to watch out for is air skeletons. Also, I don't need to take both air defenses. I just need 1 air defense plus the revenge tower, and that's very important. Now let's define the plan. Suppose I take the left side. Now I need to decide where to use the Dragon Riders and where to use the queen. One option would be queen from the bottom and Dragon Riders from the left, but that's not ideal. If I send the queen from the bottom going upward, I would need to wall break her inside, which reduces her ability to funnel properly for the Dragon Riders. So instead, I'll send the Dragon Riders through the core and keep the queen on the side. However, there's a problem: the sweeper. It makes me consider using the giant arrow to remove it, but I don't like relying too much on execution. If I miss the giant arrow, the attack can fail. In general, if execution helps but isn't essential, that's fine. But you should always try to build a plan that still works even if execution isn't perfect. Only in extreme cases like esports competitions against very hard bases should you rely heavily on execution. So I need a plan that still works even if I miss the giant arrow. Now, how do I deal with the sweeper? I could freeze it, but that's not ideal because I would probably need more than 2 freezes since it's deep in the core. The best option here is using an overgrowth spell. This reduces pressure, disables the sweeper, and also helps with pathing. If I place it in the core, the Dragon Riders will be forced to move around the base instead of getting stuck. However, I still need some defenses active in the core, otherwise the Dragon Riders might drift outside the base. So instead of covering everything, I'll target the bottom Inferno Tower, the Super Wizard Towers, the Sweeper, and the Builder Huts. This way, I keep some defenses active to pull the Dragon Riders into the core. I also need to use the Overgrowth slightly early, so it expires right when the Dragon Riders reach the core. Then I can use the Warden ability to protect them at the right moment. This creates pathing, neutralizes the Sweeper, and reduces reliance on execution. Then I would revive Duke only when the Dragon Riders reach the core. This improves synchronization because the defenses will focus the Dragon Riders instead of Duke. Maybe I could also use another Overgrowth spell for the Fire Spitter, but I don't think it's necessary. It's better for me to freeze it. There's a very high value freeze here because I can hit the Fire Spitter together with the air defense and also the Inferno Tower. So I get a lot of value from a single freeze. I can also use 2 freezes if needed, which I think is the better option here. On top of that, I still have the Minion Prince ability available, which I can use depending on the situation. Now let's talk about the Queen. She must be used on the left side slightly earlier. Why? Because she needs to funnel the multi-archer tower and the expo before the Dragon Riders reach that area. Otherwise, the Dragon Riders might drift outside the base, so the Queen must funnel, but also stay synchronized with the Dragon Riders. If she gets too far ahead, she will take unnecessary damage from the monolith, which is not ideal. The goal is for the monolith to be targeting the Dragon Riders when she reaches that area. This is what I always talk about: synchronization between the core and the sides. Once you master this, your attacks become much more consistent. So the full plan is use Duke with double poison since there's no side damage and he clears safely. Start Dragon Riders from the bottom since there's no pressure there. Begin with a few Inferno Dragons to set up the entry. Then deploy Dragon Riders in a spread. not all in one spot. Use the Warden from a central position, so he follows the core. Use Overgrowth to control pathing and disable the sweeper. Time the Warden ability at the core. Use Freeze on high-value areas like Inferno, Air Defense, and Fire Spitter. For the Queen, funnel the left side. Use Siege Barracks to support her. Wall break toward the Hero Hall to give her access. For Duke, deploy him at the left Wizard Tower, since from the right there is side damage from the multi-archer tower. Use a Yeti for funneling on the opposite side. So that's the plan. Now let's attack and see if it works. Okay, now let's analyze the execution. Duke's part was very efficient. I cleared the entire section, just like I expected, since there was no side damage. When I used Duke's ability, nothing was hitting him, and I was also able to deal with the clan castle very easily. So overall, Duke's entry was very solid. Now we move to the Dragon Rider part. I start with a few Inferno Dragons to clean those few buildings first, because there's no reason to deploy the Dragon Riders yet. If I send them too early, they'll move too far ahead. And like I said before, synchronization is key. They would push forward while the Inferno Dragons are still clearing. Since there's no air damage in this area, I can safely take my time. I wait a bit for the Inferno Dragons to finish cleaning, and then I deploy the Queen on the left side. This kind of timing is something you develop with experience. After playing for so many years, I naturally have a feel for it, but this comes from practice. You need to build that sense of timing for when to enter with the side. After that, I send in the Dragon Riders with the Warden and the Minion Prince positioned properly. Now here I made a small execution mistake. This Overgrowth spell shouldn't have covered the Inferno Tower and the Lava Launcher. As I mentioned in the planning, this creates a problem, because now the Dragon Riders don't have enough defenses pulling them into the core. So what happens is exactly what I expected. The Dragon Riders split. Some go toward the Monolith and others to the right. This mistake cost me a couple of Dragon Riders. After that, I used the Minion Prince ability. And from this point on, it's basically cleanup. So this wasn't a perfect attack. I made a mistake with the Overgrowth, but the planning was very solid, and overall, the execution was still good. So at the end of the day, this wasn't about Dragon Riders. It wasn't about execution. It was about structure, how the damage was controlled, how the side damage was removed, and how everything stayed synchronized. That's what makes an attack consistent. And once you understand that, you stop depending on strategies and start controlling the game. If you want to support the channel, you can use code Marinol in-game. And if you want to actually improve, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.